Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Daily News Roundup. It's the place to be to get caught up on what's happening and why it matters. We've got a lot to cover today. Everything from international conflicts to legal dramas and even some pretty unbelievable events. Are you ready to jump in?
Let's go.
All right, first up, let's head over to Ukraine. President Zelensky just announced that Ukrainian forces captured 2 North Korean soldiers. They were found fighting alongside Russian troops.
Yeah, that's a significant development because up until now, North Korea's involvement in the war has been suspected but never officially confirmed.
Right.
And these soldiers were captured in the Kursk Oblast, which is actually inside Russia. So it adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
And to make things even more complicated, Zelensky also claimed that Russia often executes wounded North Korean soldiers to cover up their presence there.
Wow, that's a serious accusation. And if it's true, it really shows the lengths Russia might be going to conceal its alliance with North Korea.
Do you remember when Putin was asked about using North Korean troops last year? He kind of just brushed it off, said it was Russia's sovereign decision.
I do remember that, yeah.
Well, now we have these captured soldiers. They're being questioned by the Ukrainian Security Service, the SBU, with some help from South Korean intelligence. Who knows what information they might reveal about how involved North Korea really is and what this means for the future of the war.
It's definitely a situation to watch closely. Now changing gears a bit, let's talk about Sudan. There might be a turning point in the 2-year-long war there. The Sudanese army is saying they've captured the city of Wad Madani. It's strategically really important. They took it from rebel forces.
And we've seen some footage on social media of residents. They seem to be celebrating the army's arrival, but details are still pretty limited right now.
Yeah, exactly. While this could be a huge win for the army, we have to be careful about just relying on their reports and social media. It's really important to get independent verification to figure out the true impact of what happened.
All right, so we talked about a potential turning point in one conflict. But now let's move on to a concerning escalation in another. Germany's accusing Russia of using something they're calling a shadow fleet to try to evade sanctions.
Yeah.
This comes after an oil tanker, the Panamanian-flagged Aventin, lost power and steering in German waters.
Okay. And what's Russia saying?
Well, the German Foreign Minister, Annalena Baerbock, she didn't hold back at all. She directly accused Russia of using this shadow fleet, of aging tankers, basically, to get around sanctions and transport oil. She even said it could pose a threat to European security.
Using these older vessels definitely raises questions about safety and environmental risks. And it really highlights how tough it is to enforce those sanctions against Russia.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a good reminder that economic warfare can have consequences that reach far and wide, not just for the countries involved, but for global trade, too. And in this case, potentially even the environment.
Definitely.
Okay, let's turn our attention now to the U.S. Firefighters in Los Angeles are in the middle of fighting several huge wildfires.
This is just devastating. The Palisades fire is already the most destructive wildfire in LA's history. Thousands of buildings have been destroyed. And sadly, the death toll is rising.
Yeah, it's awful. Tens of thousands of people have had to evacuate their homes. And the dry conditions combined with those really powerful Santa Ana winds are making it nearly impossible for firefighters to contain those flames.
The pictures coming out of the area are just heartbreaking. Whole neighborhoods are gone, reduced to ash. And people are having to pick up the pieces of their lives, try to salvage anything they can.
It's a stark reminder of how destructive nature can be and how important it is to be prepared, especially in areas that are prone to wildfires.
You're right. It also really underscores the impact of the drought in California. It's made these conditions even more volatile.
Okay, moving on.
Well,
We had some major developments in the legal world. Special counsel Jack Smith, who's been leading the investigations into former President Trump, has resigned from the Justice Department.
His resignation's happening just before Trump's second inauguration. A lot of people see it as him trying to avoid being fired by the incoming administration. But it leaves his 2 ongoing criminal cases against Trump in a really uncertain position.
And to add to the uncertainty, a judge just issued an order blocking the release of Smith's report on the classified documents case.
Oh, wow. That definitely complicates things even further. It's really unclear how these cases are going to move forward without Smith leading them.
And adding to all the legal drama, Trump was sentenced in the hush money payment case just yesterday.
Yeah, this was a big one. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen.
So what was the sentence?
The judge decided on an unconditional discharge, so that means Trump won't be facing any jail time or fines.
But it does mean that he'll be entering his second term as the first U.S. president with a felony conviction. That's pretty unprecedented.
No doubt about that. It's something historians and legal scholars are going to be analyzing for years to come. It raises so many questions about accountability and the implications for future presidents.
For sure. Now let's shift gears to corporate news. Meta and Amazon have joined a growing number of companies that are getting rid of their diversity programs. They're citing legal and political pressures as the reasons.
This trend of rolling back DEI initiatives, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, is definitely gaining momentum. Companies like Walmart and McDonald's have already done something similar.
It seems like the reasons behind these decisions are complicated. Some people are saying these programs are discriminatory, and others are emphasizing how important they are for a more equitable workplace and for business growth.
Yeah, it's a tough issue, and the recent Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action in college admissions has definitely added fuel to the fire. It's made it even more sensitive and potentially risky for companies. I think it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out and whether it actually leads to any real changes in workplace diversity in the long run.
Okay, and for our last story in this segment, the U.S. Supreme Court seems like they're ready to uphold the ban on TikTok, unless its Chinese parent company ByteDance sells the platform.
And what's the deadline for that?
January 19th.
Correct.
The justices seem to be really focused on national security.
Yeah, I've been following this one too. That seems to be their main concern, TikTok's potential for data misuse and its ties to the Chinese government.
Exactly. And this potential ban has huge implications for TikToks. Over 170 million U.S. users. It could even force a sale of the entire platform, which would significantly change the social media landscape as we know it.
Absolutely. This is a high-stakes situation, and that deadline is approaching fast. The outcome is going to have a major impact not only on TikTok and its users, but also on the wider conversation about data privacy, national security, and how technology plays into geopolitical tensions.
Definitely a story we'll continue to follow closely. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more news from around the globe.
Okay, let's switch gears now. Head over to Europe. There was a tram collision in Strasbourg. Dozens of people were injured.
Yeah, two trams collided at the central station there. At least 30 people were injured, and a lot more were treated for shock.
Eyewitnesses are describing hearing a really loud impact and just a chaotic scene afterwards. Luckily, though, there haven't been any reports of fatalities.
That is good news. Authorities are investigating what caused the collision. It's a reminder that even those everyday commutes, they can sometimes take an unexpected turn.
Yeah, you're right. Speaking of unexpected turns, the investigation into that really tragic Jeju air crash in South Korea, well, it's hit a bit of a snag.
What happened?
So the flight data and cockpit voice recorders, they stopped recording 4 minutes before the plane crashed.
Oh, wow. That's crucial information for figuring out what happened.
Exactly. It's a big setback for investigators. They're trying to figure out the cause of this disaster. Remember, 179 people died without those last few minutes of recording. It's going to be a lot harder to pinpoint what went wrong.
I imagine so.
They're looking into a bunch of possibilities, a bird strike, bad weather conditions, even issues with the landing gear. But it's going to be tough without that key information.
For sure. Okay, let's move on. There's a new study that was just published in The Lancet. It's raising some serious concerns about the actual death toll in the Gaza war.
What are they saying?
Well, researchers are suggesting that the number of casualties could be a lot higher than what the health ministry there has been reporting.
And what kind of numbers are we talking about?
So they're estimating the death toll could be anywhere from 55,298 to 78,525.
Wow, that's way more than the 37,877 that the ministry reported.
A huge difference.
A huge difference. That's definitely a cause for concern.
Absolutely. It really highlights the devastating effects of this conflict, especially on the most vulnerable people, women, children, and the elderly.
It also shows how hard it is to get accurate information in war zones and how important it is to have independent investigations so we can really understand the true human cost of war.
Okay. Let's take a break from some of the heavier news now and look at some stories that celebrate human resilience and creativity. Let's start in Guatemala. There's a couple there that are passionately keeping the art of analog photography alive.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So what are they doing?
They run Arca Film Lab. It's the only film development lab in all of Central America that's still operating.
That's awesome. In today's digital world, their commitment to this craft is remarkable.
I know. They've got a growing community of photography enthusiasts they work with. People who just love the unique look and feel of film.
It's a good reminder that even with all the instant gratification of digital photography, there's still something special about traditional methods.
It really is.
It's really cool that they've built a whole business around their passion, especially with all the challenges they must face, like getting chemicals and finding vintage
I know,
cameras.
it's pretty impressive.
Right.
Okay, speaking of unique, imagine a giant metal ring just crashing into your village out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That's what happened recently in Kenya.
What?
Yeah, it caused a lot of panic at first,
I can imagine.
but it turned out to be a separation ring from a space launch rocket. Completely harmless.
Oh, wow. That must have been quite a sight.
Yeah, people were freaking out at first.
Yeah, of course.
Then I guess they got curious. Then it turned into a bit of a selfie spot. People were flocking to see this thing that fell out of the sky.
I bet.
So it's kind of a lighthearted story. But it also reminds us about the growing problem of space debris and how important it is to be responsible when we're exploring space.
You're right. We need better ways to track and deal with this stuff before it becomes a bigger problem.
Okay. Now, to a story that sheds light on a type of abuse that often stays hidden. The daughter of Dominique Pellicot. The man in France who was convicted of drugging his wife and allowing her to be raped. Well, she's come forward to share her own experience.
Oh, wow. That's incredibly brave of her.
It is.
What's her story?
She believes that her father drugged her too.
It's terrifying to think about. Chemical submission. It's often done by someone the victim knows and trusts.
Exactly. And by her speaking out. It shows how hard it is for victims to come forward and how much we need to raise awareness. We need better support systems and stronger legal protections for people who have been through this.
I agree completely. Her story is a real call to action. We need to do more as a society to recognize and address this type of abuse and prevent it from happening in the first place. It's a conversation we need to keep having so that victims feel empowered to speak out and get justice.
Absolutely. Okay, for our last story in this segment, let's talk about how the lines between what happens online and real life can get blurred. There was a woman in Australia who had to get her marriage annulled. She found out that a fake wedding ceremony she did as part of a social media stunt was actually legally binding.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Her partner, as a social media influencer, set this whole elaborate thing up.
So it wasn't a real wedding?
Nope.
And why would he do that?
Apparently he was hoping to use the marriage to help him with immigration.
Oh, wow. That's messed up.
It is.
It's a pretty messed up story. It shows how far some people will go for online fame and how easily people can be manipulated when
Yeah.
someone is chasing clout on social media.
Yeah. It raises some big questions about the ethics of influencer culture. And it shows why it's so important for people to understand the potential legal consequences of what they do online, even if it seems harmless or staged.
Definitely. It's a reminder that the internet's a powerful tool, but we have to use it responsibly. We have to think about the impact our actions can have on the real world.
Okay, let's move on now to some longer stories. Stories that are getting attention all over the world. Starting in Brazil, there's a movement happening there to correct the death certificates of victims of the military dictatorship.
That's powerful. They're trying to get truth and justice and some closure for people who suffered under that regime.
It's been a long fight for these families. They want official recognition of the state's role in the deaths of their loved ones.
I can only imagine how hard that must be.
There's a film that's played a big role in bringing this issue to light. It's called I'm Still Here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's started a lot of important conversations in Brazil
About what?
about accountability, healing,
Mm-hmm.
reconciliation.
That's so important. Yeah, it really shows how powerful storytelling can be. It can spark real change and demand accountability for past injustices.
Okay, let's travel back in time now to 1925 Bombay for a story of murder scandal and political intrigue that captivated British India.
Sounds interesting.
It is. It involves the murder of Abdul Qadir Balla, a prominent businessman. His death really shook things up.
Why was that?
Well, this case, it was more than just a murder mystery. It involved the Maharaja of Indore. He was desperately trying to silence his former mistress,
Oh,
and it ended up exposing just how far the powerful would go to protect their reputations.
so this case was about more than just a personal vendetta.
Yeah, you could say that. It was about the abuse of power and political maneuvering. It showed that even the most influential people could be held accountable for their actions.
It's a good reminder that justice can prevail, even in the most chaotic of times.
And it can shape the course of history in ways we might never expect. Okay, for our last story today, let's head over to the world of cricket. India A nation that was once dominant in Test cricket is now facing some challenges.
What's happening?
They've been in a bit of a slump recently,
Oh,
and it all culminated in a series defeat to Australia.
oh wow.
It's led to a lot of discussion about the future of the team and whether it's time for a new generation of players to take the lead.
Yeah, I can see why.
Their batting lineup is getting older. They've got veterans like Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, but they've been struggling to keep up their performance.
So it might be the end of an era.
It could be.
What's next for them?
Well, the upcoming England tour, that's going to be a really important test for the Indian team. They'll have a chance to prove themselves, show their resilience, and adapt to this new era.
It'll be interesting to see how they do.
Yeah. Will they rise to the challenge? Can they reclaim their spot as a global cricketing powerhouse?
It's going to be an exciting series to watch.
That wraps up our daily news roundup for today. We covered a lot. International conflicts, legal battles. We had some heartwarming stories of resilience.
And some stories that remind us that truth can be stranger than fiction.
That's for sure. We hope you not only got the headlines today, but that you also have a better understanding of the events that are shaping our world.
And the conversations they're starting.
Remember, staying informed is an ongoing process. We encourage you to stay curious, engage with these stories, and keep looking for different perspectives. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and analysis. Until then, stay informed and have a great day.